Well, it's open enrollment time for a lot of people right now.
That's right, and I caught up with personal finance expert Laura Adams to find out if people should what they should look for when selecting benefits packages. Take a look.
Healthcare is definitely the #1 benefit that continues to be offered. Some other really popular benefits are a 401k, dental insurance, disability, vision, but the healthcare tends to be the #1 desired benefit and offered benefit in the workplace.
All right, well, there's so many options. I have mine. I'm not going to name which one it is, but I'm actually even considering switching companies completely, but there's even 10 options inside of my company. So how do you choose the best one?
Yeah, it's really important. This is open enrollment season, so this is the time where employees need to really step back, take a look at what their options are. A recent study by employee benefits company Unum found that less than half of workers spend more than 30 minutes picking their plans. So this is more time, you spend more time than that on social media or planning a vacation. So take more than 30 minutes this year to review what your options are. In a lot of cases, you've got more options than healthcare. You may also have the option to enroll in a high deductible health plan that gives you the option to enroll in an HSA, a health savings account. So these are all some of the best benefits that are out there. Take a look if you've also got the opportunity to enroll in some financial benefits like disability insurance, life insurance. These are also key. Disability protects your ability to earn an income. So it can pay you up to 60% of your salary if you are unable to work due to a covered injury or illness. And of course, life insurance protects your loved ones if you're no longer around.
All right, those are a great list of benefits, but let's talk about some of the perks that now we're hearing some employers are offering, pet insurance and student loan payoffs.
Yeah, this is very interesting. The Unum survey found that about 15% of respondents are interested in getting pet insurance, so pretty low on the list. Most of them are really interested in things like family leave, so having the ability to have flexibility to take care of young kids or perhaps aging adults at home, that really top the list. And other things like professional development, gym memberships, and certainly student loan payments, those were more popular with younger respondents. These are all some very interesting benefits that some of the progressive employers out there are offering.
All right, and how about some final tips just for everybody as they're trying to navigate this open enrollment season?
Yeah, I would say the #1 thing to think about is what are you enrolling in and what are your gaps? Are there any gaps in your coverage? So healthcare is fantastic, but it's not going to help you in every situation. Think about what might happen if you are involved in an accident or have an injury, things like that can really help your financial situation. So filling those gaps with disability insurance and life insurance, taking the time to really study your options, ask questions. I would say don't be afraid, don't feel timid to ask questions if you don't understand what your benefits are. Make sure you hit the enrollment deadline and visit unum.com/benefits if you've got questions about these types of benefits that we're covering. That's unum.com/benefits for more information about coverage options.